Transforming addiction. There's a lot of information and wisdom and help and support out there in the world about addiction. I'll begin by saying, if you have a serious addiction problem, I really recommend that you go to one of the addiction specialists around the world and get support with it. I'm going to be looking at addiction from a higher level and just in the next 10 minutes, just giving you a few thoughts perhaps, so that you can consider it, whoever you are, because we all have an inner addict inside us. We're all addicted to something. And I'm going to talk about this to show you what is it that we're addicted to. But in a way, when we say transforming addiction, it's not quite the right word, because you don't transform addiction, you transfer it. It's a transference. So I'm going to explore this a little bit. Like Bill Wilson, the founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, his consciousness was transformed through the use of psychedelics. That's how he was helped, through LSD and working in it. And he went deep into the nature of his addiction and realized that the core of his addiction was actually, behind it was a realization of his own divinity and the divinity and connectivity of all things. So in a way, life is the addiction. This is why the Buddhists have called this the cycle of incarnation the wheel of samsara, and the wheel of samsara, we're addicted to the form. So there's this notion that we come in and we're caught in the form in this wheel, and we go round the wheel, and then we're ejected out and we die again. Then our addiction brings us back in again. And those addictions are food, sex, drugs, power, drama, pain, bliss. There's as many addictions as you can name. So the first step, and this is the first step, obviously, in the AA movement, is admitting that you have an addiction, right? That's the first thing with dealing with the shadow, with dealing with the inner challenge. We have to say to ourselves, I am caught here, because what our ego tries to do is it tries to escape that fact. It tries to escape in as many different ways as it can, distracting itself from the truth. So think about this journey towards awakening, that, we try and distract ourselves in all these ways in the phenomena of the world, and then we get sucked back in again because we're just following the addiction of our impulses, our desires, and all those things. And it's wonderful. The world is wonderful and painful and horrible and all of that, and it's part of the journey. But the first step is to admit that we have, this is what Buddha said. First thing is to admit that life is all suffering. Let's just begin there. And then we've kind of put a pause. We've pressed a pause button. And then we're open to something happening, right? And the next step is you have to admit that there's a higher power at work. All right. So in doing that, you open up the field to the possibility of something other than yourself, perhaps the force of grace or God or whatever you want to call it, coming in and creating something new. So you open up the field. And then what we do is we invite in creativity. And you'll see that addiction and creativity are actually linked. So genius is very much linked to addictive patterns. And we see this a lot in the lives of geniuses through the history of humanity and the arts and culture, is that those two things are linked, creativity and addiction. Because the other side of addiction is this incredible invention, this incredible inventiveness that can come out of the field of the spin of samsara, of this wheel. So we open up, so that this first step in tackling our addiction to life, to the game of life, is opening up little pauses, little gaps and stops in the wheels turning. So every now and again, we come into a moment of pure awareness, and we say, we literally are saying to the universe, I'm going to stop the wheel from turning now. And I have a little app out, the Triple Flame app, and it gives us a 3-minute pause every 3 hours on your phone, right? It's on the App Store. You can go and get it. It's quite fun. And very handy because it just opens up these little pauses, these gaps in the spinning of the wheels turning, the endless turning. And what happens in those gaps is the infinite enters in slowly, the infinite, the silence, and then we begin to observe over time subtler and subtler addictions and patterns that are locked into our body and our biology. We begin to see the restlessness of our soul. We begin to see our need for some form of external satiation to the restlessness. And in a way, what it is, it's the emptiness that we're afraid of. We're afraid that if we sit still enough and we really look at it, that there's just that emptiness is going to claim us, it's going to devour us. We can't handle it. And so we rush to fill it. This is the ancient addiction. The most ancient addiction is movement. We want to move. There's a restlessness. I have to move. I have to do something. I have to go out into the outer life through my senses. And that's why meditation and contemplation, they stop that. They stop the wheel. They close up the eyes. They close the ears. They go inward. You don't have to close your eyes, actually. You just have to sit still or be still. Or even if you've found a movement like Tai Chi or yoga, you're stilling and creating gaps and pauses for the infinite to come in. And as the awareness starts to go in for the first time, a whole new transference occurs because emptiness and silence begin to beckon us, but they're not empty. That's the thing. It's like our fear is that we're going to meet this hollow, terrifying void. But actually, the emptiness, the silence that lies inside us is filled with awareness. It's filled with bliss. It's filled with layer upon layer of pulsing knowing, wisdom, love, and bliss. I mean, that's all waiting within us. And we're spending all this time out here trying to escape the thing that we think is going to devour us. And it's a complete illusion. What can I say? This is like the true spiritual nature of addiction. And from here, as you go in and you see these truths and you feel them resonating inside you, the knowing, for the first time ever, you can actually choose which impulses to follow, rather than being the victim of the impulses. And that's powerful because you choose, yourself with a capital S chooses. But it doesn't choose out of restlessness. It chooses spontaneously, not for any reason. It chooses because it wishes to choose. It's the will of the whole is choosing whatever it's choosing, whether it's choosing to make love to someone or whether it's choosing to eat a piece of cake, or whether it's choosing out of the purity and depth of the emptiness of being. And that's how the unknown, the mystery of the unknown, arises and comes into the world. And that's the beauty of the silence that lies in all the gaps between our addictions, in the background. That it's not silent, but it's just this shift of view, this transference as we transfer the addiction to higher and higher levels of frequency. And then we drop into the mystery itself. And the mystery is endlessly fulfilling us. I'll finish with this story. Like I was reminded of the story of this Zen master called Bodhidharma, who traveled to India, from India to China. And he brought the great wisdom, the Dharma, to China. And he was brought before the court of the Chinese court. And as he was brought there, he went in, he took off his shoe and he put it on his head. And he walked up and there was this sort of tittering and this kind of, what should we do with this guy? He's a bit mad, I think, but he's this revered master. I need to entertain him. And no one knew quite what to do, and that no one wanted to mention the shoe. Eventually someone mentioned the shoe and said, "Hey, master, what's with the shoe on your head?" And you can imagine the twinkle in his eye as he'd been preparing this response, or it was just there spontaneously. He said, "I wanted you to know what kind of a man I am." And I love that, because that's the mystery inside each of us. We do not know what will emerge. The true impulses inside us, when they're not caught in the addictions of the outer world, trying to fulfill, the wheel, the hamster wheel, then those choices that are made are not choices that lead to what's called karma. So they don't propagate more problems for us. They simply allow us to enjoy and revel in all the different nuances of the world. And that's, each of us has a Bodhidharma inside us, a person of deep mystery who cannot be predicted. And that's the beauty of the inventiveness of the human spirit as it emerges from that beautiful, blissful silence that is our true inner nature. Things to consider.